Close your eyes and imagine a world where young kids sit naively as they begin their first days of kindergarten. A world where learning is limited to the enclosure of school buildings. A world where autism, homelessness, addiction, and divorce are frightening realities that are hidden from the outside. Now, step aside from that thought and see our world. Know that children growing up with autism or parent divorce are helped because of the show Sesame Street.
Sunny days, sweeping the clouds away. On my way to where the air is sweet. Where the air is sweet. Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street?
Unlike any other children's shows, Sesame Street breaks barriers by exposing young children to and educating them about essential life information, such as, but not limited to, autism, homelessness, and parent addiction, through its creative structure and fun, informative way. Sesame Street is a non-profit educational television show founded by Lloyd Morset and Joan Gans Cooney. The show first aired in November of 1969 on the National Educational Television Network, which later became known as the Public Broadcasting Service, or PBS. Ever since it first ran, Sesame Street has been helping break barriers by teaching children essential information and how to cope with the hard times in their lives. Before Sesame Street first aired in 1969, children were limited to watching mainly comical shows. Although Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood came out a year before and HR Pufnstuf came out the same year, Sesame Street exceeded their standards by breaking barriers, helping evolve modern television for children. And talking about other children's shows out at the time, Joan Gans Cooney in an interview on NPR said,
"The rest was slapstick, cheap cartoons, a lot of kind of pie-in-your-face violence, and it was terrible. It was a disgrace."
Cooney said that other shows for children did not show them what the real world is like, and they made up facts about life that hid the reality from children. Sesame Street started off its long, impactful run by being broadcasted to about 2/3 of the houses in the U.S. Quickly, Sesame Street became known around the world. By its 10th anniversary in 1979, Sesame Street went from being viewed daily by 1.9 million children under the age of 6 to being viewed by about 9 million kids under 6. 50 years later, the show is still going strong with over 2 billion views on YouTube. In the modern age, Sesame Street has broken barriers because of its exploration of controversial topics. However, before talking about things such as incarceration or foster care, it has been able to break barriers by simply focusing on education. Joan Gans Cooney said,
"The question for me was, could TV actually teach? I knew it could because I knew 3-year-olds who sang beer commercials."
Teaching children through television was not as common as it is today. Joan Gans Cooney not only recognized this, but also recognized the potential for children to absorb information through entertainment. This has been proven by research, as courts reported on the correlation that existed between higher performance in elementary schools for kids who watch Sesame Street. Sesame Street breaks barriers by not only teaching children, but also helping them learn new strategies and ways to cope with issues that are not typically discussed in children's TV. Sesame Street revolutionized education for children by providing a wealth of education in places where it's not usually accessible. These issues are exemplified through the Muppets, each one going through their own tough situation. Introduced in 2011, Lily is Sesame Street's first homeless Muppet, who recently had to move in with friends because her family couldn't afford their home. In one episode, she expresses her frustration about her family's situation to her teacher. Her teacher then talks to her about connecting the dots, a coping mechanism she devised to help remind Lily of all the people that love her. This shows how Lily's problems are openly talked about in the show. This is uncommon with many popular shows. Newsweek reported that
In television, 80% of homeless characters were only present for one episode, and over half of the characters had less than 10 lines.
homelessness is often swept under the rug, and Sesame Street breaks the barrier of avoidance by creating Lily. Resembling Lily's story, a Muppet named Julia has a story that helps inform people about struggles in our society. On the web, there are plenty of characters that misrepresent the autism spectrum. They are often portrayed as highly functioning individuals or portrayed negatively. Julia, however, portrays autism differently. She is a non-verbal autistic girl that Sesame Street cast to emphasize that autism is different for everyone. Julia shows children how to appreciate someone else's differences and represents those who live with autism. Julia is able to break barriers by fixing misconceptions about autism in a deconstructive way that children can understand and learn from. In an article by Slate, the author wrote,
"It was groundbreaking that Sesame Street told stories about an autistic person in consultation with actual autistic people."
This article represents how Julia and other autistic individuals can get represented fairly for what autism really is. This is shown in small ways, such as when Lou Everman was worried about what other children might say about her child, Julian, and the unusual habits perpetrated by his autism. However, he was able to make a friend because the friend recognized the similarities between him and Julia. It is things like this where Sesame Street is able to provide support to those whose loved ones have autism. By creating this character, Julia, Sesame Street breaks barriers by letting kids know from a young age that it's okay to be yourself. Sesame Street's message is being heard and put into practice by even the youngest of children. Muppets are representing young children who are often misunderstood by the majority of people. It helps children become exposed to things they might have otherwise not known about. For instance, Carly is a Muppet whose mother is battling an addiction. She lives with her foster family now and tells her friends that her mother is sick. Carly even goes to a special support group for children. Carly's impact is monumental, considering that she was created on the basis of need, where foster care is becoming more and more common. The Chronicle of Social Change reports,
Foster care numbers have been steadily increasing for the last few years, reaching a 5-year high of 442,995 in 2017.
Foster care is a major factor for many children, and their lives often revolve around it. Carly is able to become an ambassador for foster children, and Sesame Street provides plentiful reasons for those who are more fortunate. By bringing awareness to foster care, Sesame Street once again demonstrates how it's able to break barriers.
They broke barriers when they thought creatively and innovatively about using television as a means to educate children. Sesame Street is amazing that they don't shy away from the hard curriculum topics, and they really look for them so that they can support and help all of the children across the United States and the world.
Over the years, Sesame Street has become an important entity that still shapes modern children's entertainment. It was able to bring back the focus on preschool education and help it become crucial like it is today. Also, by opting for a city setting rather than classic suburbia, Sesame Street caters to those who have a lesser social economic standing and may not receive adequate schooling. Joan Gans Cooney said,
We decided not to have it in some magic house, and the way most children's programs are set in a fantasy setting of some kind, or in the suburbs, as Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was. And we were trying to reach all children, but the bullseye of the target, as we used to say, were inner city youngsters.
It is little details like these that do not go unnoticed by children. Sesame Street is able to fill in the gap with so many who are often purposely left behind. The show's developmental factors enable it to continue to impact the world and help educate society.
I would like to think that today we live in a better world because of the adults that watched Sesame Street when they were children. And if we think about the young children who are watching Sesame Street right now and they're learning to get along with their peers, they're learning to get along with people with different abilities and from different places, then hopefully that will translate to a continual growth of a world that's very accepting and innovative and exciting.
From children grieving with Elmo when his Uncle Jack died, to dealing with divorce with Abby Cadabby, it touches on so many topics through its entertaining format. Autism, homelessness, and addiction have impacted our society in many frightening ways, but Sesame Street breaks barriers and has helped improve society's views by exposing children to these negative impacts and showing them how to cope with what the real world is like.
I can't wait to see what barriers they break next.